If you do, stay tuned because we at Convention of States have a solution as big as the problem. Our broadcast host is Dale Parrish. He's the Convention of States Indiana State Director. Take it away, Dale.
All right, sorry for that snafu. We had a little technical problem there, so we got it straightened out here. Um, as Maringo Mike said in our introduction, my name's Dale Parrish. I am the state director here in for Convention of States here in Indiana, and I want to welcome you to our broadcast this evening. Once again, we have a super broadcast lined up for you this evening, and I want to just quickly go through and let you know the different segments that we'll be covering in our broadcast this evening. Now, the first segment that we'll get into, and we always lead off with this segment, and this is our topic of discussion segment. We try every week to have a little something different, and it might be a particular subject or a particular event that we want to talk about, and it may have some other Convention of States individuals come in and discuss that with me. But we also then do interviews. And tonight's topic happens to be an interview. This is our second in a series of interviews where we're interviewing the regional directors in Convention of States. And tonight we're going to have a young lady by the name of Monica Sellers. That is one of our regional directors, and we're going to be bringing her on very shortly here and talking to her about herself and her region and what's going on in her region here in the States. Now, once we get through the topic of discussion, then I'm going to get into some general information. I'll bring up my PowerPoint presentation and give you some general information about not only about Convention of States, but specifically some resources that we have available to us nationally as well as here in the state. And I'll give you some just a few numbers on how we're doing here in the state of Indiana. Now, after the general information segment, then we'll get into what we call the Convention of States basics. Now, these are the tenets that our program nationally as well as here in Indiana is based upon. And we always try to cover these basics because they're very, very important for newcomers, especially new people looking at Convention of States and trying to understand what we're all about. These are very, very important concepts for you to recognize and see. So Convention of States basics. Then we'll get into recognizing the viewers that we have with us tonight. Hopefully we will have viewers this evening. And if you are a viewer, in our chat section, you can input a question or a comment that you may have on your mind. Keep it brief because I'm limited, but I'll try my best to get everything, get you and your question or comment on the screen for us to address. After the viewer recognition, we'll get into the closing, and I'll kind of wrap things up and tell you about next week's broadcast and who we're going to have as a guest on that broadcast. And then we'll call in an evening. Try and keep this whole thing to 30 minutes, if at all possible. We might go a little longer. We've done that before, and that's okay. So that's how we're going to go this evening. Now, I do want to point out one other thing, and let me get the crawler across the screen there. From time to time, we do run into technical difficulties. You know, technology is wonderful as long as it works. Sometimes it doesn't. So if your screen goes blank or freezes up, then please understand we've encountered a technical difficulty. Don't wait around for us. It just takes too long to get everything up and going again. Just put us on your calendar for next Monday evening at 7 p.m. and join us then, and we'll bring you another broadcast here in Convention of States, Indiana Live. So without further ado, I want to bring up our guest this evening, Monica Sellers. And there she is. Okay, I thought you weren't going to come up there for a minute, Monica. So, hi, Monica.
Oh, good evening, Dale.
Oh,
Thank you so much for having me on.
okay, looks like it looks like your audio is lagging your picture. So I'm going to send you back and bring you back up, and let's try it again, okay? Okay, now let's hope that we can hope everything will be fine for her when we bring her up again here. All right, come on. Is this any better?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The problem is your audio is lagging. So you're saying things, and then the audio comes on after your lips have stopped. So I guess what we'll do here, let me try one other thing and see if that helps. Sometimes we get into these problems and there's just a whole lot I can do on this.
It's that fun technology.
Pop.
It's a technology.
Okay. Well, you're back on track. I don't know what we did, Monica, but we got it corrected. So we'll continue on here while it's working for us. Okay. So all right. We wanted to first talk to your regional director, and I always like to ask our guests, especially our Convention of States people like you, guests, to tell us your Convention of States story and how you got involved in Convention of States. So tell us your story.
Well, Dale, I'd love to tell that. And I'm actually going to go back just a little bit before my Convention of States story started, because that I think makes me appreciate my story all the more. And I would say I developed a strong love for our country back when I was a young girl from my parents. I grew up in Indiana, so I consider myself a Hoosier. My parents moved there when I was about 6 years old. So I got involved with a number of different, in fact, my whole family was involved with a number of different efforts to whatever we could do to try to make things better. Most of it ended up efforts around trying to elect better people. And we were successful at times. It was also very frustrating. That's very difficult to do. And ultimately, some of the people that we worked really hard to get elected went off and served and ended up really not being that much different than the ones that we had tried to get replaced. And so it felt very frustrating. It just didn't feel like we were making that much progress. And so I then ended up meeting my husband, getting married. We were blessed with a very large family, now blessed with 13 children. And I continue.
My God, I every time I hear that, I just can't imagine. Are all 13 children at home?
Well, I've got a couple of them that are getting out on their own. Our oldest is 21, and our youngest is 5. So just about all of them at home, and no twins, all one at a time. So
bless your heart, Monica. Bless you. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I think every parent has the idea that they can raise their children to go out and make a difference in the world. And I'm no different. I definitely have that. And, I see them as being the next generation.
Sure.
But also having that large of a family puts quite a burden on me. And I know my husband and I both, as we were raising the children, we were kind of too busy to do anything, but we kind of kept looking at each other as we saw the country really move in directions that we didn't think were good. And we kept saying, what is the solution? What can we do? And so almost about 6 years ago, we got an email from Michael Ferris, who we were familiar with through the homeschool movement. And he was going to be in our area doing a presentation about Convention of States. And so I had only briefly heard about Convention of States, really didn't know anything about it at the time. My husband and I we had 12 children at the time. I was expecting our 13th, and we went and listened. And I'm not kidding you, by the end of Michael Ferris's presentation, my husband and I were looking at each other and we said, this is what we've been praying about. This really is the solution. Now, we still went home and decided to research it and look it up. And the more we did, the more convinced we became that this really is the only solution, the only effective solution to the problems. So, of course, at that point, we both looked at each other and said, that's wonderful. Now let's figure out who we can help in our area. And we were then told, well, there really isn't anyone in your area, but why don't you get involved? And so we did. We didn't have any time, or we were very busy raising the children at that point. But we both got in.
You homeschool your family, right?
Yes, we homeschool as well. Both my husband and I work from home. So we had a lot of things going on, but we also just felt so strongly about this. And so we got involved as district captains, and we lived in a particularly important district, but we live in Ohio now. But we just took it one step at a time and started building our district, and became very successful at that. And one thing led to another. I eventually started volunteering for the national team. And I guess about 3 years after that, I became a regional director, and am now serving as a regional director. I was blessed to be in Indiana the day you all passed. I brought several of the kids out there, and what a moment. I tell people I could live to be 100, and I will never forget that moment when Indiana passed. And, just having grown up there and spent some time in the legislature, it was just an incredibly special day. So I was, that was really, really nice.
Yeah, many of us look at that day as one of those days where you always remember where you were and what was happening when that passed. So that was something that very, very memorable.
Yes. There's one other story that I kind of like to share that's part of my earlier history. And I was also homeschooled myself in Indiana. And in 1980, my parents were criminally charged with homeschooling in Indiana. It wasn't legal back then. And many people don't realize that at one point homeschooling was not legal. And so they got my brothers and sisters and I tested and, fought the case for 4 years. It finally ended up being dismissed. But the thing I like to share with people is Michael Ferris is actually the one that ended up getting homeschooling legalized eventually in 50 states. And the encouraging thing to me, we all hear about once you've lost a right, we never get them back. And that's essentially true. It's very, very difficult. But the encouraging thing is I think homeschooling is a great example of a right that we had once lost that we were able to reclaim. And the most encouraging thing of all is that at Convention of States, we are using essentially the same process that he used to put a coalition together in every state to work to get homeschooling legalized. It's essentially the same on the ground game plan that we're using. It works through the state legislatures. It involves grassroots support on the ground. And, they faced a lot of challenges in getting that done, and they were ultimately successful. So I like to let people know it's not all bad. We can make progress and have victories with these things.
Now, Michael Ferris argued that in front of the Supreme Court, didn't he? Wasn't that what on homeschooling?
Well, most of the homeschooling laws are at the state level. So really most of the victories happened. I think there have been some related cases that were at the Supreme Court level, but most of them were at the state level, and one state at a time. So, again, it was really just about the identical process that we're going through using the state legislature.
All right. Great story. Thank you very much, Monica. Now, you're a regional director. What states do you cover?
So the states that I'm covering are your adjoining state of Illinois. And then I have a bunch of states out on the East Coast. So I have Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts.
Okay. I think all the regions are kind of spread out with states, aren't they? As we get more and more states that become past states. Well, that kind of takes me into the next segment here that we want to cover with you, and that's the difference between a past state and an open state, or a state in play. As you mentioned, Indiana is a past state because we passed the resolution in 2016. But now your states are different, right?
My states are in that they have not passed their resolution yet. So there is that difference. In a lot of ways, there are differences, but in other ways, we're really working for the same mission. And so the mission of Convention of States is to build the largest, most active grassroots, most knowledgeable grassroots army in the history of our nation. And that work really continues, whether it's a past state or not. Obviously, the focus shifts a little bit more to education after you pass, but there's still a need to be active and engaged at the state legislature. And as the years go by, we want to continue to build those relationships with the legislators. And so in that sense, there's not that much of a difference.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, now I'm sure you don't have any challenges in front of you in your different states. I say that, but I know you do have challenges. What are some of the challenges you're facing?
Well, I would say probably the biggest challenge, and it's probably the same one you face there in Indiana, and that's just getting the word out. The average person that we talk to about Convention of States gets really excited. They support what we're doing, but we have small leadership teams in most of our states. We're building, we're gaining more people every day, but really the number one challenge is just getting the word out to people and letting them know about this solution, the only solution that's as big as the problem.
Right.
And so then I would say second to that would be just having enough state leaders. And we never have enough leaders. We're always looking for more. That district captain position is really the biggest one that we need to fill in every single state. And that's basically the person that works in their local area, in their local House district, to kind of be on the ground representative for Convention of States and help spread the word, build those relationships, and just get as many people as possible active and engaged in what we're doing.
Very, very key position. I've always actually thought it was the most important position in Convention of States, and that's the district captain. Yes, and we're facing the same thing in Indiana, getting people involved, and we're not different. I don't believe in a lot of other organizations. I talk to, for example, we have some people that are very involved in church organizations. They say the same thing: hard to get people to step up and get involved and take on some responsibility. So that's a challenge throughout, whether you're a past state or a state in play.
Yeah. Dale, I think one of the reasons that people are hesitant to step up is they don't feel like their effort is really going to make a difference. And so I love to share with them my experience and just some of the successes that I've seen come from, I tell people, don't underestimate the difference that one person can make. One person may not be enough in your state to make all of the difference, but you can make a significant difference. And so, it's really just a matter of the person understanding that their efforts can go a long ways to the success in the state.
That's a good closing Monica. I think we'll wrap it up right there. And I want to thank you for giving us the time. My goodness, with 13 children and a regional director, I don't know. I appreciate you carving out some time for us this evening. So thank you very much, Monica, and you have a good evening.
Well, thank you so much, and appreciate all that you all are doing out there.
Thank you, Monica. Good night. Monica Sellers, I'll tell you, that's regional director, and Monica is very involved in a lot of other training webinars that we do in Convention of States. So she is a very, very busy lady. So I'm very happy that we were able to bring her on this evening. Well, I want to get into now my PowerPoint, but I tell you, due to the time, we're going to kind of modify things here a little bit. But let me bring up what I've got here, and we'll cover part of this for you this evening. So let me get here, and I want to initiate the slideshow option here so that you'll get a full screen and be able to clearly see what we're talking about. So what I want to what I want to cover is has to do with the resources that we have available to us here, not only in the state but nationally. Our main resource in Convention of States is our national website, conventionofstates.com. This is the first place you go to when you join Convention of States and become a supporter. And I'll talk about that a little bit more a little later. But conventionofstates.com, our national website. Now, embedded in the national website is our state website page, which is conventionofstates.com/Indiana. Obviously, a more focused look on our state. Social media platforms, we're on numerous platforms. The main one is in Facebook, our state Facebook page, Convention of States, Indiana. As a matter of fact, this broadcast is coming to you through our state Facebook page. That's Convention of States, Indiana. Now, we also are on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, COS Indiana. Now, this is very much an educational resource. What you'll find there on our channel in YouTube, you'll find a number of narrated PowerPoint presentations covering different topics within Convention of States. You'll find recordings of these broadcasts. This broadcast will be is being recorded and will be posted on there tomorrow, and as well as on our state Facebook page, Convention of States, Indiana. Now, also on our YouTube channel, we have links to a podcast that our legislative liaison, Paul Phillips, who's been on this broadcast a number of times. Paul does a podcast called The Free to Be Free, and it's very, very good. Paul does an excellent job on these podcasts. So we have links on the YouTube channel to each of his podcasts, The Free to Be Free. I encourage you to check those out. Now, beyond Facebook and YouTube, we're on Twitter, #COS Indiana, Instagram, Convention of States, Indiana, LinkedIn, and we're on a number of other platforms. So if you're a social media type person, you should have no problem finding us out in the social media environment. Now, let me give you some quick numbers if I could. We are in Indiana, we have been growing tremendously. Now, in 2019, we surpassed 41,000 supporters here in the state. Like I said, been growing at a tremendous rate. In 2020, our goal is 52,000 supporters. And I'll tell you right now that through April, we have done very, very well. We're right on track to attain this goal of 52,000 supporters. So we're growing tremendously here in Indiana. Of those supporters, we have about 2,900 individuals that have indicated a willingness to volunteer, should they be called upon. So we have about 2,900 individuals in that capacity. Now, also, we have about 40 people in leadership positions right now. Now, I want to just take a few seconds here to talk about this. If you're interested in getting involved in Convention of States, which I hope you are, the very first step, like I mentioned, is to go to our national website. Here it is again, conventionofstates.com. Open an account, sign the petition. That makes you a supporter. And that's a very important move right there, becoming a supporter. Now, if you want to get a little more involved and you have some time to devote, go to click on the menu selection on conventionofstates.com. Click on the menu selection, take action. Scroll down to where it says become a leader and look at the different volunteer opportunities we have here in the state. If one is of interest to you, open it up, read about it. If you're really interested in it, go ahead and make application. Now, you're not obligated in any way. Don't worry about that. But when you make application, what happens then is your name comes up on a report that I see every day, as well as a few others. One of us then will get in contact with you to further discuss your interest in that position. Now, these positions will vary in the time commitment required for the position. So if you feel you don't have much time, you got a heavy workload, you got family responsibilities, whatever it may be, but you have a little extra time, then you want to look at the positions that we have that require less time. Each one will kind of give you an idea of how much time is required each week. But if you have more time, if you want to get more involved, then there'll be positions that require much more time. As we said in our interview with Monica, we're always looking for people to fill the district captain positions. These are individuals that are taking on responsibility in their particular district. So it's a very, very important position, and we're always looking to fill these positions of district captain. But there are other positions there, and like I said, the time commitment varies. All right. Well, I'm just going to mention briefly the basics here. We're not going to go through these because of our time tonight. But in Convention of States, we have 3 tenets that comprise the basics of our movement, and that's the problem, the solution, and the plan. And I would encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, look at a previous broadcast, and take a look at how we covered in that broadcast, how we cover the Convention of States basics, where I go through each of these and explain what's involved in each of these tenets. So I would encourage you to do that. We won't take the time to go through that this evening due to time constraints. So let me go back here, and we will I want to now recognize some of the viewers that we have tonight, and we have a few. I'm glad to report. Here's gentleman Gary Stout, and I think he was trying to tell us that when we started out and we were having our audio problems, he was trying to tell us that he could hear both of us. So appreciate that, Gary. And then he came, and I think this is when Monica was talking about homeschooling. He chimed in with another comment that his wife was homeschooled, and he says that was the best thing ever. So I hear a lot of that from other individuals in Convention of States that are involved in homeschooling. So very wonderful thing. This next lady just wanted to say hello to us, and this is one of our district captains. Lydia Gonzalez is not her name. Melba Kaiser is her name. She's just operating under someone else's system, I guess, here. But that is her picture. That is Melba's picture. She's one of our district captains, a very good district captain, I might point out, in our state. And she's just saying hello to everybody. So thank you, Melba, for tuning in this evening. She tries to tune in about every broadcast that we have. All right, I want to move on then to what we always try to use to close out our broadcast every evening or every Monday evening, and that is before I get into this quote, I do want to mention now our next broadcast will be, of course, next Monday evening, which will be the 27th of April, and the plan is we're going to have another one of our regional directors on. His name is David Schneider, and so just like Monica. Monica's the second one we've had on. We've got two more to go, and David will be our guest next Monday evening, and we'll talk about the same things, basically the same things with him about his region and how he got involved and the states that he covers and the challenges that he faces in his region. After next Monday's broadcast, then the following Monday, we'll be having another one of our region directors on, Susan Peters, and Susan was originally scheduled to be the first one, but we ran into technical problems with her, so we had to move her to the end. So we got two more region directors to interview, and I believe I have found these very, very interesting interviews to conduct. So I hope you'll be able to join us next Monday evening. So let me get back to our closing quote. I always like to close out each broadcast with this quote, and this comes from one of our founders and current president, Mr. Mark Meckler. By the way, we're working to try and get him on our broadcast here in the upcoming future, and we'll be getting. I know Mark likes to do this whenever possible, so stay tuned, because we just might get Mark on our broadcast here in the near future. But one of Mark's quotes that I've always liked, and that is that he says, there's a fundamental question facing us in our country. And the question is not, what should we do? The question is, who decides? So the question facing us is a two-word question, very simply. Who decides? We in Convention of States, we believe we, the people, should have a greater say-so in making the decisions. And we think that the way to go about this, because of the abuses that we see in our federal government, the issues that we believe need to be addressed in our federal government, that holding a Convention of States is in fact the solution to such a big problem that we have in our country. So like we say, the question facing us is a two-word question, very simply, who decides? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this evening, and I want to thank you again for tuning in. Enjoyed having you this evening, and I hope you've enjoyed the broadcast this evening. And look forward to seeing you again next Monday evening for Convention of States Indiana Live. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.